Newcomb, a member of the CMC Board of Trustees. Thank you for being here today. It's great to see you all. Today's forum is an eye-opening public health topic relevant for all ages and lifestyles. Sitting is the new smoking, Part 1. In the Our Healthy Community series, and it's presented by Ohio Health, brought to us with support from Mount Carmel Health System. Both are represented here today by many of their associates. Please help me thank them for being here today. We hope that you will stand up and take notice as we explore the consequences of being sedentary, as well as some of the little things you can do in daily life to make big differences in your overall health. I'd like to do a little unofficial survey. How many of you have Fitbits? Okay, of those who have Fitbits, how many think it's really helped you to improve your walking steps? Interesting. Okay, thank you. Our speakers are champions of a healthy community and healthy outcomes. Please welcome Bernadette Melnick, Dean of the College of Nursing at OSU, Associate Vice President for Health Promotion, and specifically relevant to today's topics, OSU's Chief Wellness Officer. Joseph Horan, Founder and Medical Director of the McConnell Spine, Sport, and Joint Physicians and Medical Director of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Ihoma Inali, Medical Director for the Center for Healthy Weight and Nutrition, Nationwide Children's Hospital. And our host for today, Ellie Merritt, news anchor on WCMH and NBC4. Let's provide them with a warm welcome. Podium is yours, Ellie.
All right. Well, thank you for having me here today. I'm happy to be here. I'm the medical reporter, so this fits right into my wheelhouse. And actually, we've done lots of stories on this very issue with many of these panelists here today. First, notice that they're standing. Bern led that charge, just as she led the charge at OSU. She took it over here today, too. I love this topic, and here's the deal. Think about it. Sitting is the new smoking. Really, smoking? Smoking's this health evil in our country right now. I mean, you used to be able to smoke wherever you wanted to. Now, hey, get 1,000 feet away from the window and any entryway. I mean, it's such a difference. And think about all the things that you could do to your body. We chug 5 gallons of coffee, fast food, all that junk, alcohol, everything. And sitting is just as bad as that. There really is a lot of research around this now, and it's so interesting. Sitting has been linked to diabetes, heart disease, cancer, premature death. They even have a name for it. It's called sitting disease, and boy, do we have it here in this country. Quick question. How much time do you think you spend sitting each day at work? Maybe 4, 6 hours, 8, 10. That's the average for Americans, and that's because we sit all day at work and then we go home, watch the Cavs lose, and spend 3 hours there on the couch. So that's the problem, and we're going to get to the heart of it today. Let's talk about this as I turn to our speakers, and we've got some good ones here today to talk about this. Go ahead, introduce yourselves, and share why this conversation is so important. And Bern, I'll start with you.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today. If you'd ask me as a nurse practitioner, what's the #1 cause of death in America? It is cardiovascular disease. But if you take into consideration all causes of death and disease, behaviors, yes, our behaviors are the #1 killer. Physical inactivity, smoking, unhealthy eating, alcohol use, as well as suicide. And we have to remember that 7 out of 10 diseases, chronic conditions in our country are preventable. Now, what is the equivalent to 5 hours of sitting. That is equivalent to smoking 1.25 packs of cigarettes a day.
Dr. Anali?
Yeah, sure. That's scary, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm a pediatrician and a mother. And I think when I look at this topic, that phrase, that sitting is the new smoking, is brilliant. Because as a pediatrician and as a mother, I've never really thought about that when I think about our kids, right? We look at sedentary behavior and we think TV viewing, we think video games, we think all the social media technology that's out there. But sitting? And I think the most important thing, if you can walk away today, is that our kids sit. They sit in school the way we sit. And in our offices, we can have sit, stand, desk, but our kids don't have that option. So I think when I look at this topic, in both roles, it makes me step back and say there is so much more that we can do, and we can start early. That's the most beautiful thing about working with kids, right? We start modeling, we start teaching them, and we can attack some of those behaviors really early. And we know that if you are sedentary as a child, that risk for obesity and the cardiovascular disease that Bern talked about is much, much higher when you get older. So I think today I'm looking forward to this discussion, because when we leave, I want everybody, if you have a child, if you're a mother, if you work with kids, if you're a teacher, that you step back and say, what can I do about the sitting that's going on with our kids?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Joe Ruan. I'm the medical director of the McConnell Heart Health Center. And a quick anecdote, I was having this discussion with my family, just kind of warming up and feeling out some of the key points. Later that evening, I was enjoying a little time on the couch with my wife, and my 18-year-old grabbed the moment, as 18-year-olds always do, walked by and said, having a little smoke break there, guys? But the point is, he got the message. And as we all hope to do here today, is deliver a message. And as clinicians, if I'm preparing for a talk, I'm looking at research and data and numbers, and I don't want to overwhelm you with all that, although the numbers, I think Bern gave it just perfectly. I mean, that initial statistic is just alarming. But if there's one thing I can ask you to take home, it is this. As living human beings, our bodies are made of cells, trillions of them. Every single cell, every single second is watching the environment. If you're exercising, if you're a weightlifter, the cells are going, hey, we're lifting more weight, we better get up to the task, and they get bigger and they get stronger. If you're a runner and you're running and you're worried about osteoporosis and you're doing exercise, the bone cells go, hey, you know what, we need to lay down some more bone, we better get to it, and they do their job. If you overdo it, the cells say, hey, this is too much, and you get overuse injuries, stress fractures, etc. Our cells are watching what we're doing every minute of the day, and they respond. If the lights were a little dimmer in here, and if it were sunny outside, what would happen? You would leave here, and you'd have to shield your eyes, because in an hour, your eyes said, you know what, there's not a lot of light in here, let's shut it down. Our body responds that quickly. When we are sitting, our cells say, nothing going on here, with no work to do, shut it down. And your metabolism shuts down, and your glucose use shuts down, and your energy storage capacity shuts down and begins to fail us. So if we don't move, the simple message is move. Move more. Move as much as you can, please. Because if you don't, your body will fail you. And for the business leaders and the folks who are constantly thinking and thriving and striving, it's as well known that your mind will fail you too. If you've been sitting for an hour or two, get up and take a 5-minute walk, and you're back in the game. So my message is just keep moving.
All right, great. You know, there is a movement. It's called juststand.org, and you can print this out. I love it. It's a flyer that says, sitting so much should scare you. But they came up with a study, and 67% of Americans say they hate sitting, but 86% of Americans say they sit all day at work. Who is that out there? There are quite a few of us, and I'm really curious, what can you do about it? There are devices, there are treadmill desks, all kinds of things, and you guys are the pros in there, but I know it comes down to switching the culture and behavior. That's tough.
Absolutely. So I'd like to ask you a question. How many of you have tried to change the behavior of somebody you love? Yes. We all have, right? Whether it's squeeze the toothpaste differently, put the toilet seat down, get more physically active. But what do we know about behavior change? It's what I call character building. Most people don't change unless crisis happens or their emotions are raised. And I have to tell you a personal story. I was 15 years of age, living in southwestern Pennsylvania, near the West Virginia border. My dad was a coal miner. We lived in a half of a little house, but I was a happy kid. I was well loved. One day, cold January day, I was home alone with my mom. She sneezed and stroked out right in front of me. Now, what was really sad about that story is she had a history of headaches for over a year. My dad kept saying, would you go to the doctors and figure out what's wrong with you? She went to the doctors a week before she died, was diagnosed with high blood pressure, given a prescription for a high blood pressure medication that my dad found in her purse after she died. Now you might ask, why am I sharing that? Because I suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder for a couple of years after she died, and it was preventable if she would have followed through with taking her medication. See, behaviors are a choice. And it's got to start with us every day. Standing is a choice. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator is a choice. And you've got to find your emotional reason to change, to get healthier with your behaviors.
Boy, changing behaviors, that's a tough one. I know. I love you. Did either of you, again, we're talking about how you do that. What do we do about this problem? We know it is an issue. And there are some things, different culture shifts and behavior shifts, and even things that you can buy to incorporate into your lifestyle.
So again, I go back to my kids, and we have this joke, a friend of mine, and we say that we are a cheer-loving society. So when I'm in my office, even though I have a standing desk, if I'm working really hard on something, I want to sit down and do it. But if you look at kids, if you look at preschoolers, for instance, how many of you have them at home? How many of you work with them or take care of them? How many of you have gone to the grocery store and seen them? So the thing you notice about them, so unlike what Bern was saying, where you're making a choice by the time you're an adult, that comes naturally to them. The need to move, the need not to sit, the need to just be active. And actually in studies that have looked at our preschoolers, they find that there are 4 different kinds of activity that they do through the day. And those types of activities is what you call really non-exercise activity. So it's not going to the gym for 30 minutes, for an hour. It's not lifting weight. It's running to mom when mom calls you. That's activity. You have activity that clusters together if they play tag, right? And as you add up all those pieces of activity, that helps them if they don't eat too much. right? Because it is a scale. But that's really how our preschoolers are able to maintain their weight. So when you look at it, what I tell people is, can we build on that natural desire to be active? How can we do that if they're in school? You know, and one really quick one before I hand over is that I'm not sure if you're aware, but in Columbus, First Lady Kasich actually has a set of 6 videos. They're 10-minute videos. It's called Time for 10, and you can order it, you can get it on YouTube, but it's really built for 10-minute brief exercise that you can use in the classroom. And you can also use it at home, but it gets back to that need for kids to get up and move when you have periods where they have to sit. Want to add something?
I could listen to you guys all day. My favorite chair joke, by the way, is an old one by Stephen Wright, who said, if your legs bent the other way, what would a chair look like? Everybody remember that? Think about that for a minute, okay? You will be in your car going, think about that. 2 quick points, because the question is, what can we do to facilitate change? On a personal level, I've come across a lot of great one-liners in my 18 years now, or 15 years at McConnell. And one is, you may want to change, but do you have a plan to change? We all want to change. What are we going to do? I want to. The question is, what's your plan? Because if you don't have a plan, it won't happen. And there are a lot of good books out there about change, but there's the thought, and then there's the conscious decision. So please leave here with the thought of, what am I going to do in the office? We were challenged to stand during this presentation. Are you willing to go home and do that with your family, with your employees? What challenge are you going to bring home to them to help motivate change? What small changes are you going to do? I heard that someone spends 7 hours on a conference call at times, committed, focused.
That's my husband.
Ellie's husband, right?
That battle, yes.
Now, Ellie can go buy him a Bluetooth headset where on that conference call he can get up and walk around in the office. These are simple plans that make big differences. You can facilitate that in someone. And all the talk is about walking treadmills are expensive. And now, of course, there are studies about, do you fall off the walking treadmill and how hard it is to type and so on and so forth. And we don't want to get into all that. But should you buy a walking treadmill? Sure, if you will use it. If it will facilitate change. If it helps you make your decision to change, then do it. The second quick one is about culture, which also comes up. At McConnell, I spent my first several years on the clinical side and then made my way to the business team. I'm a doctor. I don't know much about business. I'm not that good at it. So I go into the business team prepared. I have my spreadsheets, my notes, everything. The first question out of the executive director's mouth was, how is Michelle doing? Has anybody seen Michelle? I think she has some things going on with her parents, and there was a concern about a sick pet, and she doesn't look right. How about somebody checking in on her? That was the introduction of our business meeting. And for the business leaders in the community, what drives culture change is not investment in your diabetes programs and giving someone $25 if they achieve their cholesterol goal. It's demonstrating that you care about your employees. It's been shown over and over and over again. Culture of care, culture that your employees are valued and that they mean something, go a lot more than here's your $5 Starbucks card for exercising today. So the 2 points are a plan, and think about the culture in your work environment and your home, and show folks that you care and they will initiate their change.
Thank you. I know what to get my husband now for Father's Day. Was going to take him to the Ohio Tap Room for a growler of beer, but he'll be thrilled with that Bluetooth.
Everything's a balance, Ellie. A little bit of this, a little
He'll
bit
be
of
able to
that.
thank you, Joe. All right, there's another hiccup in here, and it has to do with getting that activity spread throughout the day. Sitting 6 hours a day makes you 40% likelier to die within 15 years than someone who sits less than 3. Here's the key. Even if you exercise, so you can sit 8 hours a day at work, go home, run an hour, right? You're feeling great about that. It doesn't make up for that. So I wanted to talk about that. There was a British study that said they wanted you to work in 2 hours of light activity throughout the day, sprinkling it. What should we be doing? If you were going to prescribe this for a patient or a friend or a colleague, what would you tell them to do?
So I have a philosophy, and that is in God we trust, but by golly, everybody else better bring data to the table. So I am very research-based. What we do has to be based on the best evidence. So I am going to give you 4 evidence-based healthy lifestyle behaviors that if you do them every week, the research shows you're going to have substantially less cardiovascular disease, diabetes, back problems, and depression. The first one, 30 minutes of physical activity 5 days a week as an adult. That does not have to be on a treadmill with a trainer sweating yourself out. It really doesn't. It could be 3 10-minute brisk walks a day. Sitting is the biggest zapper of your energy. So instead of reaching for a cup of coffee, I want you to get up and move, do jumping jacks, whatever you have to do. You'll get more recovery back. Number 2, 5 fruits and vegetables a day. The average American gets 2.5. Number 3, don't smoke. Number 4, everybody gets happy when I say this one. If you drink alcohol, 1 drink a day if you're a woman, 2 if you're a man. And everybody asks me, Bern, how big can that drink be?
I was just going to.
Yes, but I have to share a funny story with all of you. So I outlined these 4 evidence-based behaviors for our new president at Ohio State. And he got up to the podium after I spoke and said, I want to address Bern's 4 evidence-based healthy behaviors and let everybody know I walked 15 minutes to the local liquor store this morning. Had a drink and walked 15 minutes back, and now she tells me I could have had 2, not 1.
Yeah. So so looking at what can we do, I think for us, with our families and our children, it's really raising awareness that this is a problem. I think it starts there. It's being aware of just how much your kids sit around, how much they're watching TV or video games, how much they sit in school, and then looking at really small opportunities to put in activity. So in our center, we talk a lot about during their breaks in a show, having the kids get up and do an activity. We have this little fishbowl and they can pick any activity, jumping jacks, but what it does, it breaks that process of just sitting down. So I think for kids, every time you talk about sitting as the new smoking, we think adult. So the very first thing is, can we raise awareness? Can we make the mothers, the teachers, all of us more aware that sedentary behavior for our kids is not just about TV, social media, iPhones, but also how can we put in tiny little bits of activity during the day? And I'll tell you, most kids will do it. I'm just going to add this. There's a study in an elementary school where they went in and they changed the desk. So they changed the desk and made it a standing desk, but they left the chair there. And they gave no instructions. So these kids came in, and by 6 weeks, 70% of the kids did not use the chair. They were all standing. And the remaining 30%, most of the time, would stand. So again, if you think of just that concept of increasing awareness, of making it easier for them, so behavioral economics, thinking about ways in which we can do that, then we can look at addressing the sitting or how sedentary that they are. something?
Sorry, my back's starting to hurt a little bit. No, regarding the question of, and it's important, well, because you're going to see this coming out as this information comes out more, that it doesn't matter if you're a runner, and that's going to confuse you, or it doesn't matter if you exercise. And that message will confuse you, and here's how I would like to try and help sort that out. Because we actually had a very interesting experience at the McConnell Center where we have a very large cardiac rehabilitation program. Someone who's had a heart event, they come and exercise for 12 weeks, and we can measure their outcomes. Blood pressure, lipids, blood glucose, et cetera, et cetera. And what we found is, boy, when we had them in the McConnell Center, we want them to work hard, right? So they would come in and they would exercise, and they would give it all you got, and we would be motivating them. And some of these people had a little maybe arthritis in their knee, or they did have back pain, or they had a bad shoulder, or maybe that was more exercise than they've done recently. And you know what they did after their exercise session? Went home and sat for the rest of the day. And maybe even recovered the next day. And when we looked at those two groups and separated them out, those that worked hard and went home had worse blood pressure and higher glucose and higher. So it's data driven. So the simple message is this: you don't buy your exercise in chunks. Got my exercise today, I'm done. Doesn't work like that. The cells are always watching. What's the total balance of what you've done for me throughout the entire day? Just think of it that way. The total balance of activity, the total balance of movement. Not this 60, well, I worked out 60 minutes this morning. Well, minus 60 minutes minus 10 hours of sitting, you lose. That's the simple equation. Look at the big picture. At the end of the day, reflect and say, what have I done for myself today? How much was I in motion? Period.
Okay, now I'm scared. The cells are always watching. I like that. You know, if we're going to call sitting the new smoking, we probably need to look at the rules around that. We have so many regulations and controls around smoking today. Do you see a time when we start to talk about that for the workplace, where we're going to require people to, to workplaces to make these changes?
So visual triggers can help people with behavior change. The CDC puts out fabulous posters that you can print and put up by your elevators. But I want to get back to what Joe said, in that culture is so critical, and doing this because we care about our people is so critical. But leaders and parents have to walk the talk. If we solely tell everybody else to go out and stand more and sit less, but we don't invest in standing desks, we don't lead standing meetings, our employees are not going to do that as well. So next time you go back to your office, to a meeting, I'd like each of you to say to your colleagues, let's have a standing meeting today. They're going to look at you like you have two heads, but even though it's good for your cardiovascular health, you get through meetings a heck of a lot faster when you stand versus when you sit. Try it.
Well, and we know you're thinking clearer too. That was one thing we talked about, Joe, is that you clear out the cobwebs.
I remember I was sitting there with a manager, and it was a beautiful spring day, and we have something outside McConnell called Peggy's Path, and this is a true story. We had an issue we were stumped on, and it got to a point where we were both sitting there kind of staring out the window, and I said, not because of this, just because quite honestly it was a nice day, I said, let's go take a loop around the path, and we solved the problem walking around the path. I mean, you change your environment, you change your stimulus, you get the blood flow going, you get the oxygen to the brain. There's no question. It's research-based. That's just not a nice fuzzy story. It's absolutely true. How many people have their best thoughts when they're exercising? I used to carry a recorder on the treadmill or when I was jogging, because that's when you feel the sharpest and the freshest. So there's no doubt about it.
In a few minutes, we will move to the audience questions. So if you have a question that you want to ask, and we encourage that, I know there are plenty of them out there, make your way up to the microphone. We'll do that in just a minute. And I want to ask a question first. Again, how many of you, do you have treadmill desks? Do you like your treadmill desk? Do you use a standing desk? Or do you, like you said, Joe, do walking meetings and kind of casually take it that way?
All of the above. So I have an elliptical in my office. I also have a bicycle that's a smoothie maker. So as you bicycle, there's a blender on the back, and it makes smoothies. And yes, the culture at Ohio State, I have to say, we have the best team. Many of them are right here with me today at the Ohio State University. Our vision, sincerely, is to be the healthiest university on the planet. And we were the first university in the country to appoint a chief wellness officer. Now we have set a trend in other universities are focused on wellness like we are.
Bern, I believe that you have that because we did a story about 3 years ago when they made that change over there at the university, and we did an interview where we were facing each other on treadmills, and she did it in high heels. Just quickly, do you guys have, what do you use?
So real quickly, obviously I can't get smoothies because I don't have that. But now I know how I can get them. I have a standing desk, and I find that in using it, it helps me get off. It's not just that I'm moving, but I think it also helps your posture. You feel better, you hold yourself better, and when I sit, after a while, you feel tired. So it's just, I think every little bit helps. If it's a standing desk that you can get that one. If you can get the smoothie making machine, or get that, or the treadmill desk. But that's really what I use.
And Joe, you're running around so much during the day.
Yeah, but I'm having an inferiority complex to Bern.
And you probably should.
And you know what? That's an important point, because a large portion of wellness is self-reflection and how you feel. And when we say care about your people, it's help them feel better, and don't feel bad about yourself. And I see that a lot in patients. Well, I can't be as good as, I can't do it as much as, I don't know if I can keep up with Bern, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to do what I can do, and that's a very, very important point. Don't compare, don't measure, don't worry about how much someone else is doing. Just keep an eye on your own cells, for starters. I'll tell you my quick personal story as far as what I do during the day. I do run around. I'm a clinician. We're running around. But when I'm walking room to room, hall to hall, I'm enjoying it, and I'm appreciating it, and I'm thinking how lucky I am that I can, because several years ago on Father's Day, we used to have a couple of doctor friends that rode motorcycles. Just simple stuff, nothing. And I had a little accident and so on and so forth, and I had a big problem with the leg, and it could have turned into a major issue, but it didn't. A week after Father's Day, there was a motorcycle for sale, by the way, but anyway, it was very serious that I may not have been able to walk like I was able to, but through some really good healthcare, things are good. So I appreciate the fact that I could walk. When I park away from the store and walk the extra spaces, I'm enjoying it. I feel good about it. It makes you feel good about yourself. And you reinforce those positive message about the little changes that you make. So when you look at that stairway or look at the elevator and take the stairway, feel good about it. Pat yourself on the back, because it's very reinforcing, and it perpetuates, and it becomes kind of addicting.
Good point. All right, let's get to our questions. Do you want to step forward? And then it is CMC's tradition to take the audience questions. So step forward to the microphone, give us your name, ask the question, and thank you in advance for not making long editorial comments.
Hi, my name is Mark Mattson. I'm VP of Human Resources for an engineering firm locally. We've been trying to promote activity for some time, and recently just offered our employees a $50 gift card if they purchased a Fitbit. We got 39 people to do that, and then we had friendly competition using an application on the phone to track it. And it's been interesting, because now I see people taking the stairs that hadn't taken the stairs before, people taking, in small groups, taking walks after work and going out. So it's just one idea. My question is this: you're talking about standing. So I'm having trouble with how does standing around a conference table differ from sitting around a conference table? Is it about standing or is it about moving?
You are using, whether you know it or not, a lot of muscle power to stand. To stay in an erect position, the major muscle groups of the quadriceps and the hamstrings and the spinal muscles, these are big muscles and they're working. So the cells are getting the signal, I'm not doing anything, I'm employed right now, I'm working. So the simple act of standing sends different biological signals to our body than sitting does.
I'd also like to add the biggest muscle in our bodies, the gluteus maximus. And when you sit all the time, blood drains from here to there. So you're not as alert. So in addition to the physical benefits, you get a lot of cognitive benefits out of it too.
And the only other thing I'll say is that it's very difficult to just stand. When you stand, you move, you fidget. And all that goes into that non-exercise active calorie expenditure. So it's a lot more than the idea that you're upright.
Okay. Great, thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm David Bream. I'm an architect focused on workplace design. We've been able over the last many years to demonstrate productivity gains to clients that meet the bottom line, whether of a work environment that allows for different types of work styles, whether it's collaborative or heads down focused or teaming spaces or touchdown spaces for mobile folks. When it comes to the wellness question, most of our clients are saying, do me a really nice fitness center. Make sure we have daylight. And those are certainly good things. But I guess the question is, how is information getting to business leaders that can make decisions about not only the cultural aspects of encouraging movement, but creating environments where movement is easy? It's that open stare. You know, are the insurance companies, are the HR professionals bringing to light the benefits of not sitting and being active throughout the day?
It's HR professionals, health promotion people, chief wellness officers, which a lot of corporations have. And the main thing is what you're talking about. We have to make it easy and fun. And we have to make it the social norm to be active. That's key, making it the norm. So it's aberrant to sit a lot anymore.
I would implore a bit of patience with that because it's important. When medical news comes out, the original studies about sitting and smoking started to percolate around 2011. It's 2015 and now it's media. It takes 5 years for medical information to become mainstream. It takes up to 20 to affect societal change. It took 20 years to 30 years to get us to quit smoking or more. So this is just the beginning. So I encourage patience. Stay with it. It's the right thing to do, and the right thing to do will prevail, but it's going to take a little while to get this message out there, and you all can help.
And I don't have a comment, but if you decide to go into our schools and kind of relook at the architecture of the classroom, we would love to talk to you.
But to your question, Bern, I wanted to ask you about this because when you made that change there, and that was a big change at OSU, we did that story 3-4 years ago when you started, and I think it made national headlines because you were set out to be the first. But that started with leadership, and sometimes it takes the boss to do it.
Absolutely. Not only leaders have to be supporting it and walking the talk, but middle managers are key too. We have found if you don't have your middle managers on board, it's going to be character building. So you need leadership, but you also need grassroots efforts. We have a program called the Faculty Staff Wellness Innovator Program. We have 450 faculty and staff working with our wellness team to create cultures and environments of wellness in their unit. So it takes leadership, but also grassroots.
Andy, you have a question for us?
Yes, hi, Andy Campbell. This is actually a question from our Easton location,
Okay.
from Chris Graves, and she's interested. She says, my 89-year-old mother is very sedentary. How can she help her?
Message number one, it's never too late. It's never too late. There's a very clear graph of what happens to us. It's a depressing graph, but it's a very clear graph of what happens to our bodies and our muscle function as we age. And to simplify it, the sedentary folks go like this. The people who are active, not quite straight line, but very little. You could function when you're 60 as you can when you're 20. 80-year-olds and 70-year-olds who are sedentary, if they don't have significant barriers, major pain problems or something, they can improve their strength 100%. It's easier for an 80-year-old to improve their strength than it is for a 20-year-old. A 20-year-old can't bench press from 300 to 600 pounds, but an 80-year-old can increase their strength by 100%. So the message is it's never too late. You may need to work with someone, a physical therapist, an exercise physiologist, a professional, but start now. It can be done.
My name is Lisa Craig Morton, and my question is, Fitbits and similar tools have become very popular. Personally, for me, I think they work great because I do what Dr. Rowan said. Every time I go to the grocery, I park in the farthest spot, and I feel good about it. And that Fitbit helps me keep track of that and keep doing it. So I'm starting to read, though, a lot of negative stuff about using Fitbits and trackers, and I'm just wondering, talk about the benefits of it, the negatives of it, which outweighs, and I know it's just a tool like any other tool, but talk about, are there negatives to using tools like that?
It's all individualized. You have to figure out what works for you and run with it. And you don't have to wait till January 1 to set a new behavior change goal. Today can be your January 1. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention we've got to integrate mental health promotion into behavior change. 1 out of 4 children, teens, and adults have a mental health issue like depression and anxiety. People who have chronic conditions have comorbid mental health issues. And if we don't get to the mental health piece, we're not going to change behavior. So that is really critical as well.
So we have found that the tracking devices actually work really well. One of the, I think, negative things to it is more on the diet side, the nutrition side. So most of them will track your steps, but they'll also give you a sense of how many calories that you can have in 24 hours. And in almost all the cases, we looked at it in our center, they're overshooting the bar. And it all depends on what you put in, but we always advise our kids, and they are kids, so they should talk to a dietitian if they're looking at weight management, that they talk to a dietitian. If we're going to talk about calories, we really want to be sure that we're giving them an accurate mark. So I think it's more, at least in our experience with kids, it's more on the nutrition side in terms of how the tracking devices work versus the activity side.
Thinking about the question of can we enforce this? Is this something that is going to be brought into our culture from a regulatory standpoint? And I'm wondering, if I'm a passenger and my friend drives me halfway across the country, can I sue him for secondhand sitting? There's a new phrase that we're going to think about. Secondhand sitting. What was the question, Ellie?
It was about Fitbits, really, if what you like.
I'm going to give an interesting slant on that. I'm not sure what the negative input was, but I'm going to maybe take an interesting slant. Hyperbole. Is sitting the new smoking? No, it is not. If you talk to a scientist, smoking is the new smoking, and smoking is still this horrible, toxic, killer thing that doesn't. Sitting is the new smoking is wonderful media play. It's a wonderful message. It's a wonderful thing that we can use to get out there, but don't take it literally. Fitbits are bad, you'll fall off your treadmill, all this stuff is probably a little bit of, well, we need a different slant on the story, right? Somebody go out there and say something different about Fitbits. So something I found in 20 years of medicine is that common sense always seems to rule the day. So use your common sense when you're making judgments about those things, and you'll end up in a good place. And it may be just somebody coming up with some different slants on things.
Yeah, amen. Next question.
I'm Roger Blackwell, and I really didn't have a question, but my Fitbit had turned red, so I thought I better get up and walk across the room. No, I do have a question, actually. As a teacher, I just was figuring out, I'm standing up all the time, but my students are sitting down all the time. I do 3-hour seminars usually. I think I'm going to have them walk around the room every hour. But here's my question. And probably Dr. Anelli would be the most appropriate, but anybody, do we have standards for teachers in K through 12 schools to get them to stand up and walk around the room every hour or not?
So we don't have standards, and you made I really want to touch on that point because it's very difficult to teach sitting down. You get up, you talk, you write on the blackboard, yet the students are sitting down. So in Ohio, I'm not aware that we have standards. However, the SB 210 bill had a part of it, it's non-binding on for the schools, but part of it is to find a way to put in some activity during the day. And that's really where the Time for 10 video came up. So the teachers can teach concepts that involve activity. And they do that a lot with math. Can you stand up, stand, sit, multiple times, or even in English, there's this exercise where they will read a story, and for every time they say an and, you stand. And then you sit. So you can incorporate a lot of activity into teaching those concepts. And in most cases, that's a win-win. But you're absolutely right that looking at it from a policy standpoint is probably our best bet in reaching a greater population of kids.
And Dr. Anelli, as a mom with 2 little girls at home who love those Kindles and they just, I can do this and they won't even register. What can we do at home to get them, do you set time limits? What works?
So a couple things work. You set time limits. You can also tie it to incentives. Okay. There are some video machines that actually have a device in them that will turn off, depending on how long that they've been watching it.
I like it.
My experience is that those things work as good as your parenting is. So you as the parent, you have to be committed, right? You've got to look at your time and say, okay, oops, your 30 minutes is up. You have to have you get up. And that is where the behavior change is so difficult. But there are some of those devices really work well, and then I think tying it to either an incentive or a disincentive. So every kid is different. Some kids love incentives, and some kids will only respond to disincentives. So it's up to you as the parent to figure that out. And tie it together.
All right, good. I know there are some timers out there. And I have one more question.
I'm Jane Scott, and I want to apologize to the audience that this just hasn't had any enthusiasm in it today at all. I mean, really, this has been a great panel. Thank you. You've given us some really, really good ideas. I think one of the things that you said was kind of have to find your own path. Are there support groups? Are there other things that we should be looking at? Websites? I know my Fitbit isn't a Fitbit. It's like a Spark Space, and they give us ideas all the time, every day about things. Are there other resources like that we should be looking at? And I guess what's the one individual thing that we walk away today? Do we all get standing desks? Do we take 10-minute walks? Is there one thing that you find with the folks that you work with that seems to work the best and that people can change their behavior the easiest and the quickest?
You have to find your emotional reason to change. Today can be your January 1, and I would encourage people not to focus on their weight. Research shows that an overweight person who is engaging in activity has better outcomes than a normal weight person who does no activity at all. So decide today, just one healthy lifestyle change in the next 30 days. Make a commitment to it, walk out of here and do it.
And I would say most of us, we work, if your workplace has a fitness program. So at NCH, at Nationwide Children's, we have one that involves Fitbits. But if it has that, sign up for it if you haven't. Because what you have is the social support. It is difficult sometimes to remember and get through. So looking for areas where you can get some kind of social support in increasing your activity. And then I go back again for the kids to awareness, right? If I asked you, does your kid eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables? Most of you would say yes. If they actually write it down, you will figure out that they eat 1 a day. So it's for our kids, it's really trying to be aware. How long are they sitting down? How can I increase activity? Can I use the ad breaks? Those kinds of things. So 2 things. If we work, sign up for a fitness program at work. Most of them are just fabulous. And then the second one is just increase your awareness of what your kids are doing, because that helps you make changes.
Your 2 questions were, one, what should we do? And I would implore to ask yourself the question, what's my plan to move more tomorrow? I personally don't want to direct you toward a treadmill or this or that. What am I going to do to move more tomorrow? Period. That's it. Think about that. Keep that thought in your mind. What am I going to do to move more? Number 2, support groups, things like that. That's a difficult question. I believe a lot of it is very intrinsic, and you have to search yourself. There was a gentleman I was working with to try and quit smoking, and we did all the traditional routes, medications, classes, education, warning, showing him the pictures of the ugly lungs. Yes, I want to quit. He was out mowing his lawn with his 6-year-old son, and his 6-year-old son had one of those little toy lawnmowers doing like Daddy does. So when Daddy pulled out his cigarette, when he turned around, his son had found a butt in the grass and he had it in his mouth. That cigarette fell out of that man's mouth and he never touched it again. Just like that. It's personal motivation. You have to be honest with yourself, be a little introspective and go, what's in this for me? Why do I really need to do this?
Good point. Do we have more time, or Carol?
I think we need to end right now, but I hope you enjoyed today's forum. Remember, you can view and share all of our forums on CTV, Columbus Television, and WOSU and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Now, before we thank everyone, I think we should all stand up. Now, please help me thank our sponsors, Ohio Health and Mount Carmel Health Systems, and our speakers. Thank you.